So, ladies and gentlemen, today I was feeling bored, so I'm like, why not call my golfing buddy from Sedona and my golfing buddy and my drinking buddy from Sedona, Dr. Dennis Harness, who's actually having a Vedic Astrology conference on November 29th through the 4th. I'll be there. So if you don't know about it, you better like go there and book your hotel and your retreat with at the Poco Diablo, right?
Yeah, it's just real easy. It's just SedonaVedicAstrology.com.
Okay.
You can book
Yeah,
hotel.
go there. I'm coming. Everybody that you know is gonna be there. We're just gonna be hanging out, having a good time, man.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of nice group of people.
So, Dr. Dennis, I had to call you because I've known about, these planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. I brought other scholars to talk about it, but still I'm just not able to feel confident to use them in a reading. So I'm just trying to collect as many scholars as I can who have worked with these three outer planets, know about them, and especially how to use them in that Vedic sidereal sense of view. So please show us, what is it, how do we use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the actual Vedic astrology?
Well, what I do is I utilize them primarily because, again, they were popularized through Western astrology.
Yeah.
So to me, they belong more fully in that domain. But what I do is I plug them into the Vedic charts. And I find when they make hard aspects in the chart, particularly, like I think in my chart, I have Pluto conjunct the ascendant. When they're, conjoined with an angle in the chart, like the descendant, midheaven, IC points, 4th house, 7th house, 10th, 1st, or if they're conjunct a planet, particularly a personal planet, then that signature of that planet will come to pass in the person's life, and the mythology and the sacred stories associated with that planet, whether it be Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, comes to life more fully. And then I also use them as transits. So, for example, what do we have? Pluto is at about 24 degrees of Sagittarius. So let's just say if you had a planet or your rising sign around that degree, let's just say within a few degrees, Pluto would be making a hard aspect by transit, and that will also have its effect. So I've always used them because I started out in Western astrology originally, and because of Pluto being on my ascendant, I had a personal relationship with Pluto, let's put it that way. And Pluto's connected with Lord Yama, which is the Lord of Death, and much more than that, but let's just say he is the Lord of Death in Vedic mythology. And I had several near-death experiences before the age of 2. So it kind of played out in spades in my personal life. And so for me to deny that energy wasn't there would be, like kind of burying my head in the sand, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I had a personal experience and personal relationship with Pluto early on in my life. And it's even bared fruit even later in my life. I've had a couple of near-death experiences even in my adult life.
Wow. And so Pluto mainly signifies things related to endings and death-like experiences.
Yeah, and it's kind of the bulldozer planet. It's a planet of transformation. It's a little bit, it'd be, how would we say, trying to think what it would be analogous to. It's kind of it is a death rebirth planet. It is probably one of the planets that's associated with, it's in traditional or in modern Western astrology, it's associated with Scorpio. So it has a little bit of a scorpionic energy connected with it, of wanting to explore the steamy gullies of the soul. I call it the Sherlock Holmes planet of astrology. It likes to solve problems, riddles, go in and explore all the little nooks and crannies of life. So Pluto's a deep sea diver versus a snorkeler. That's the way I describe Pluto. Yeah. So, but it does have a little bit of scorpionic type energy to it, definitely. in terms of its
Now,
rulership.
have you figured out if these planets have any kind of like, those special aspects like we do in Vedic astrology, like 5 and 9 or 3 or 4?
I tend to look at the hard aspects as being there more prevalent, like let's just say the conjunction or the opposition or the square.
Okay.
The trines are more harmonious, like Jupiter trines, Jupiter aspects. So those can be more supportive, whereas the more tighter angular aspects tend to be more intense, particularly if you're talking about Pluto. I personally like Pluto. It was actually discovered at Lowell Observatory up the road from Sedona in Flagstaff.
That's right. Yes, it was.
In 1930. And it was about the time that the nuclear bomb was being developed, and World War II was just starting, just the starting phase of that was starting to occur in the early 30s. And then, of course, we're just right after the Great Depression of 1929. So Pluto, it's interesting is I should share this story with your viewers. I always kind of got a bad rap early on in the 90s when I was starting in Vedic astrology and starting the conferences back in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And I got trouble from the traditional Vedic astrologers and the astrologers of India about using the outer planets.
Okay.
They would actually write me off as a Western astrologer because I used these outer planets. They thought they were space trash, basically.
Yeah, they have heard that term by them, yes.
Yeah. So basically what happened was I think it was in 94, there was a conference on the East Coast put on by Richard Houck. And one of his speakers was a man named Narendra Desai who came from India. And he outer planets. He lived in New Jersey before he died. I think in 2001, he left his body, 2002, something like that. But Narendra spoke on the outer planets at this conference. And I was so relieved to hear, traditional astrologer from India using the outer planets. And he actually used them primarily in relationship compatibility. And he found them sometimes to be somewhat difficult. Like if your Pluto was conjunct your partner's Saturn or something like that, that could bring some challenge for the Saturn person, the person with the Saturn, natal Saturn. So he found in the Madras Museum a Vashishta palm leaf, which was hundreds of years old. It said that during Kali Yuga, we would discover 3 planets. And those planets would be named Prajapati, Varuna, and Yama. Prajapati being like Uranus, being the creator kind of god.
Mm-hmm.
Varuna being the god of the waters, like Neptune or Poseidon. And then Lord Yama being like Pluto, Lord of death, or Hades, as they would say in Greek mythology. So he said that these planets would need to be utilized to help us navigate through Kali Yuga. Or he didn't say that, actually, the Vashishta palm leaf said that. And I actually went in search of it when I was there in 2008 in Madras and could not find the particular palm leaf that this was supposedly written on in the museum. But he was a very man of high integrity, Narendra Desai, and so I'm sure he wouldn't.
Well, you know what they say about Nadi leaves? They change their writing. It's only meant for certain people to read certain things. So if they weren't there, that does not mean they're not there. They may have changed their wordings.
Correct.
And now they can't find it.
Interesting.
It was for Narendra Desai. Yeah, that's what they, like in B.V. Raman, remember, I don't know, you were very close to him, but B.V. Raman, he came across Jivanadi. And in front of him, he said that Jivanadi changes. The great Vedic astrologer A.V. Sundaram has seen the actual Nadi leaves change the writing in front of him. When he got it from his friend, the words changed in front of him.
Wow. So
definitely it was perhaps for Narendra Desai's destiny to see that and for him to then bring it to the West.
Yeah, I feel it was. And And I feel some of my work has been to do that too. I wrote an article back in 2001 called Pluto, a Neo-Vedic View. And I dedicated the article actually to Narendra Desai. And in that article, I talk about the outer planets. So people, actually, that article is on my website at dennisharness.com. So people could read that in their leisure, draw their own conclusions. But I think, you know, they were discovered, you know, more in more recent times. So we're talking about the discovery of these planets in the last couple hundred years. So again, I think that the spirit of the Vedas was to be open to new forms of truth. It was never meant to get concretized. It was always to stay open, you know, to new energies. And I think at the same time, we have to be careful to mix these things too much, because you can, as one of my teachers, Chakrapani, said, you can create goulash. You know, you start matching all these things. Okay. So like, I don't use them as rulership planets in Vedic astrology. Like I do not utilize Pluto as the ruler of Scorpio.
Right, yeah, that's what I've heard too.
Stay with Mars as the ruler of Scorpio.
Yeah.
I'm kind of traditional in that sense. But I still plug them into the chart, so I like to see where they're at natally.
So wherever they at in that, in whatever house, let's say the Pluto is in, you see that house being like some sort of a transformative house where you'll have to clean out trash and rediscover yourself.
It can be. Yeah, it can be. Or say Pluto in the 7th house, the person may be kind of like drawn into relationships like a moth to a flame. And it's a little bit tricky. A little bit like having Rahu in the 7th house in a certain way. You know, so person has to be a little bit more careful about obsessive type relationships. And if you get into studying the Greek mythology around Hades, you'll read about the story of Persephone, where she's pulled into the underworld by Hades. So Pluto or Hades in the 7th house, you can think of it like that, being kind of maybe obsessive or being kind of abducted, so to speak, into the underworld.
Or they're like attracted to partners who are very much in the darker side of life and bring them down with them.
There can be, yeah, there can be, depending on, you know, if it's a Pluto-Jupiter conjunction, it may be a different ballgame than say like if it was Pluto-Mars in the 7th, you know.
Like what would then create, like let's say if we had Pluto-Venus and Pluto-Jupiter versus Pluto-Mars, is that more destructive then in that sense?
Yeah, I would say the Pluto-Mars, all things being equal, you know, would be more challenging, difficult marital karma.
Okay.
Whereas Pluto-Jupiter could be, the person may be drawn to, let's just say, a depth psychologist or somebody that does really deep research, more of a research type of person. Because the Jupiter would help to, how would we say, balance the energy of Pluto, or maybe bring out the higher qualities of Pluto, hopefully.
Okay, I see. And then what about Uranus?
Uranus, I connect up with the Greek myth of Prometheus. A famous Western astrologer named Rick Tarnas wrote a small book on this, where he draws a lot of analogies, and I found this to really, you know, bear fruit and hold water, is that he found that Uranus was connected with the Prometheus myth, which is the Greek myth of bringing Prometheus being the soul that brought fire to earth, brought change, brought innovation. Sometimes you'll see Uranus prominent in people's charts that are astrologers, because again, astrology is a very Promethean kind of activity. And also people that work in social media and that work with the internet and work with computers. You'll sometimes see a prominent Uranus in their chart. It can be an opposition, a square, a conjunction to personal planets, but sometimes Uranus will play a role in that way. And it's very unpredictable energy. Again, I would think of Uranus being a little bit like Rahu in a certain way. It has that certain unpredictability to it. So it's interesting because Rahu has a little bit of Uranus Pluto mix, if you could imagine those two planets being mixed together.
Yeah.
And then K2 is a little bit like Neptune, because Neptune is the planet connected with mysticism, metaphysics, moksha, spiritual liberation, delusions, illusions, could be drugs also, escapist tendencies, these kinds of things. And those factors are all very K2-like, and they're very Neptune-like. So, and again, the analogy was drawn to, in this Vashishta palm leaf, that Neptune would be likened to Varuna. And there's actually, I don't know if your viewers are going to be able to see this at all, but this is very small. This is a Navagraha shrine at the temple in London.
Okay. Okay, I see the murtis, yeah.
And can you see where it says Uranus?
Yes, Uranus, yes.
Yes. And then next to it, Uranus is Rahu. And
Yeah.
So the idea is that this temple, maybe it read my article or it connected with Narendra Desai, but in this temple, it says Uranus, Rahu in Sanskrit, and then it's got K2 and Neptune.
Oh, okay.
So when I went into this temple and saw this was back, I think it was around 2003, something like that. It was the last time actually that I spoke at the British Association for Vedic Astrology. So it was over a decade ago. And Camilla took us to this temple it's a Murugan temple, Kartikeya Subramanian temple in London. And so this Navagraha included the outer planets. I thought it was very interesting, very fascinating, because it's the only time I've ever seen it, anything like this, any correlation.
And did they have the Uranus statue at all or no?
Rahu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and it was so bizarre, Kapiel, because I was doing the lecture on the outer planets. And I was a little bit shivering in my boots because I figured I was going to get shot down by some traditional Jyotishis. They were going to give me a really hard time, and everybody was fine. But I just thought it was confirmation right before my lecture, the day before, that we would go to this temple and they would be drawing those similar parallels.
Oh, wow. That's a very powerful omen there.
Yeah.
For you. And whenever we look at charts, besides these three planets, we always tend to read, nakshatra placement of Saturn, Moon, Sun. Do you read nakshatra placement of these three planets?
You could look at that. To be honest with you, I haven't done that research,
Okay.
But you could always look at that and see if there's some correlation. Like, for example, it would be interesting to see if there was someone had their Neptune, let's just say, in Shatabisha, and the deity is Varuna. Who knows? Maybe there would be something very powerful about that.
You're right.
In Varuna's nakshatra, that would be interesting research to do. I don't know if Ernst or any of the group, connected with Ernst and our friends, Ryan, if they've done any work on that at all, because I know they've done intensive research on the nakshatras, but I'm not sure if they've woven in the outer planets to look at that or not. Do you know?
No, I have not. I mean, I've actually bought Ernst here, but we didn't really dive into it. He didn't discuss about the nakshatra part. But one thing that I want to ask him, and so I wanted to ask you, like how Sun represents the father, Moon represents the mother, Venus the spouse, Mars brothers and sisters. Do these three planets have any kind of like a relationship in our life? Like if they come in, this type of a person is coming in our life. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. What type of people do they represent, or do they at all?
No, I would say Pluto. Let's start with Pluto. I would say Pluto would represent police officers.
Oh, okay.
Detectives, people that are detectives, maybe military, particularly like special op type people that do work, perhaps the FBI, people that work in some kind of surveillance, maybe in, what do you call it, surveillance video stuff for home protection.
Yeah.
Pluto can also, as you said, can indicate sometimes dark figures in our life, can represent the underworld, people associated with the mafia. Probably on a more positive side would be someone in the research fields, someone doing, in-depth research in whatever field. Those are some of the things that come to mind right away. Plumbers also.
Really?
Plumbing, because plumbing is associated with Scorpio. And so this is more bringing in modern astrology. Yeah.
In Vedic, they say Saturn is the plumber.
Oh, really?
That's the basement pipelines and whatnot. A plumber is able to get down and dirty, fix the toilet. So that's what Saturn represents.
And I think Pluto, it has a little Saturnian energy to it, because if you connect with Lord Yama, if we use
that's what I always thought Pluto as more like Saturn than anything else.
Yeah, that's some good points there, because Shani is also connected with Saturday, and I always connect Shiva somewhat with Saturday too, and particularly Lord Yama also, because it can be reflection of endings. So it could also be people that work in mortuaries or cemeteries or work with death, or could even be someone that does hospice work, that works with death and dying. So those are some of the things that come to mind when we think of people that may be associated with Pluto.
Okay, what about Uranus?
Now that, like we said, it could be people connected with computers.
So...
Or with the internet.
Okay. So like an IT professional can come in your life if Uranus is transiting within your 4th house. IT person will come into your home, or some Uranus type person.
Yeah, and I would connect it up with engineers, particularly like space engineers.
Yeah,
that
aerospace and innovation. Yeah,
exactly. So anybody that's doing innovative type work, I would associate with Uranus, and could even be connected there with Uranus. Could be also any kind of inventors. People that have inventive kind of nature, that are bringing fire to earth, bringing change, bringing innovation. So it could even be some political person, but somebody that's a little bit like Bernie Sanders, or, somebody that's bringing innovation in, or wanting to bring new, fresh energy into play.
Okay.
So kind of also, would think anybody that's, again, just kind of cutting edge type thing.
And Neptune?
And also Robert Hand, the famous Western astrologer, he associated Uranus with astrologers also, because they're very Promethean, can be in their way of bringing change and innovation through astrology.
But it's funny how Neptune is connected to mysticism, but then astrologers are Uranus.
Yeah.
Because I guess they are more calculated, mathematic, and...
Exactly.
Like astronomers, pretty much. Okay.
And he's more cerebral, so it may be in a little bit more his projection onto what astrologers embody.
Okay.
Neptune, as you're saying, can be connected with mystics, psychics, people that do dream work. So it can be connected with psychologists, particularly probably more transpersonal type psychologists, like psychologists that are bringing in spiritual psychology and Buddhist psychology.
Past life regression, things
Good.
of that nature.
Hypnosis. I would connect Neptune up with people that work in the sea businesses, like Navy officers, or if you work on a cruise ship, or do some kind of work, a boatsman, somebody that works, a fisherman.
Okay.
Could be connected with Neptune. Also, Neptune could be also associated with anybody that works in the aquamarine area, like works at aquariums or things like that. Neptune people are can be connected also with the drug world, because Neptune can be connected with people that have escapist tendencies. So it could be connected with drug dealers or drug addiction, or it could indicate people that work in the addiction field, in the addiction recovery field. Venus, Neptune is the higher octave of Venus according to modern astrology. So it can be connected with the film and photography world. So sometimes if there's a prominent Neptune, the person may be a photographer or videographer or director, or somehow associated with the visual arts. You could think of it like that.
Okay.
Neptune has that connection. And then if we draw parallels to Ketu,
yeah,
we get some of these other aspects coming in. It may be a spiritual teacher. It could be some other kind of Ketu-like activities, which can again be associated to me with astrology as well, definitely.
So
but
let's say like Ketu is squaring Neptune. Will that also count the same way?
It would kind of double. I think it would kind of create a double theme there. Yeah. But again, with that square, I would say there could be a potential for problems with drugs or alcohol or escapist tendencies with Neptune Ketu square.
Okay.
Along that line. And I would say the other key word for Neptune and Ketu is intuition. These people are usually very intuitive if there's a strong Neptune. It's kind of like Neptune conjunct Mercury. There can be a very strong intuitive nature, or if Neptune is conjunct the ascendant, or even with the sun. But again, sometimes there can be with that escapist type tendencies. So the person has to walk the mystical path with practical feet.
Okay, mystical path with practical feet. That's a great one. But what have you noticed? Like, if these planets are like, do they operate in the same way? Like, like how planets too close to the sun is combust. Will combustion work with these planets?
It could. Yeah, it could, because the Sun Neptune person may be very mystical, very otherworldly, but they may also have drug, alcohol problems. Some of the higher forms of Neptune may not get to, how would we say?
Fructify.
Yeah, exactly. May not come to fruition. Be a good way to put it. They may get harmed in some way if the Sun Neptune conjunction, for example.
All right.
Thinking of the other ones, yeah, I would think that there would be some harm to the significations if there's a tight conjunction with the sun. Yeah.
Okay. So you wanted to actually show us an example of a very, very famous person. Somebody like a big celebrity. So we gotta look at the example. Should I share the screen?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is the screen of the great celebrity, Dr. Dennis Harness.
Yeah. Well, the reason I showed this chart, besides maybe laziness, is that I thought it would be good to show a chart of someone that I actually know, that I've done a lot of work with, and it just popped in because I have a really strong Pluto in the chart. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, Pluto is conjunct the ascendant. It's actually, my rising sign ends up being about 9 degrees, but it's 11. It's close enough. The idea here is that, like I said, I have a number of different near-death experiences before the age of 2. Mm-hmm. And one thing that's not utilized in Vedic astrology, to my knowledge, you may be able to correct me around this because there may be somebody that's doing this that I'm not aware of, but is the use of midpoints.
Okay.
For example, if you look at my rising sign, it's actually technically about 10 degrees. Let's just say 10 degrees.
Do I have your time of birth right? 4:38 a.m.?
4:38.
Kansas City?
Should be correct. Yeah, it should be correct.
Yeah, so it's showing here as
11. It's 11. Close enough. My ascendant's about 10 degrees. It's probably Kansas City, Missouri. It should come out. But anyway, the idea here is that Pluto and Mars are on both sides of the ascendant. So you know how we use the word papakatari, where something's scissored?
Yeah.
So my ascendant is scissored between Mars and Pluto, if you think of it that way. Do you understand?
Oh, degree-wise, because yours is hemmed in the middle. Okay.
Exactly. And if you subtracted the degrees from either side of the ascendant, again, using 10 degrees of Leo rising rather than 11, the midpoint between Pluto and Mars is the ascendant.
Okay.
So there's a lot of emphasis on this in Western astrology, using midpoints, because they're like PowerPoints. It's kind of like, taking the energy of both of those planets and magnifying it.
Okay.
So Mars, as Sanjay Roth has pointed out, is probably the most important planet associated with death. And it's interesting because Mars rules Scorpio, which is the sign of the zodiac associated with death. Pluto is there to play as well. So I'll give you an example. When I was in the womb, I had a near-death experience. Actually, it's kind of personal, so I won't go into the details, but I was about 7 months in the womb when there was an attempt to, we'll just put an end to my life. We'll just put it that way.
Okay.
And then when I was about a year old, I went through the windshield of a car. I was in a car accident and had my whole skull crushed.
Oh my God.
And again, Mars in the first house.
Oh, that's definitely, Pluto doing it. Yep.
Yeah, and Mars there as well, because accidents.
Yeah.
And the first house being the head. So, and then when I was born, the cord was wrapped around my neck. So.
Oh my God, man. Talk about Pluto energy over you.
Yeah. So this is why, I can't ignore Pluto, And then at the age of 2, I dehydrated, and they had to feed me through my thighs intravenously to give me enough nutrients so that I could. So by the age of 2, I had gone through several near-death experiences. And then later, just to tie this in with Saturn, because you're bringing up the point of associating Saturn with Pluto, when Saturn was transiting Kapiel over my degree of my ascendant to the minute, I had a near-death experience where I thought I was having a heart attack. My whole body went numb. I had the amble on the chest, the whole 9 yards, and I just thought I was dying of a heart attack. This was about 9 years ago.
Oh my God.
Saturn was transiting that midpoint, or the ascendant, the midpoint between Pluto and Mars. So to me, this is kind of magnified, can you see in my chart, where maybe for other people it wouldn't reflect near-death experiences or whatever. But for me, specifically because of the midpoint between Pluto and the ascendant, it magnified it.
What did it turn out to be 9 years ago? Was it just an anxiety or?
What it was it was actually, my theory around it was because I ended up spending about $5,000 on medical examinations, and they could find no damage to my heart because I thought I had a mild heart attack. Because I had all the symptoms. But my theory is that I had a Kundalini awakening in the heart chakra. And, Saturn is associated with the heart chakra because Saturn is Vata, our heart is Vata.
Yeah.
And Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra, and Venus also rules the sign of Libra, which is connected with the 4th chakra, according to David Frawley in his research. So the idea is that Saturn, Anahata, the 4th chakra, means unstruck. So Saturn teaches us to love with wisdom, to be detached, not be so emotional. And so Saturn can be, when there's an awakening of the Kundalini energy in the heart chakra, it can be very difficult to deal with, very challenging to deal with. So I went through a real dark night of the soul during that period. I mean, it was a very powerful time. But, again, not everyone that has Saturn transiting over their ascendant degree is going to be having this.
Yeah.
Although I think right now with Saturn late Scorpio, it's a pretty tough transit if somebody happens to have a planet or their ascendant late Scorpio with Saturn transiting over that. I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but suffice it to say that Pluto, I don't know, if any of your viewers, I'm sure some will have Pluto conjunct the ascendant. So there may be themes in their life around near-death experiences, things like that. Yeah.
Okay. And what about your Neptune with Saturn?
The Neptune, that is a very, very wide conjunction. So
Yeah.
to be honest, I wouldn't make too much of that whatsoever, you know.
But what about like Neptune in the third house itself?
It can be connected, Neptune in the third house can be connected with writing.
Okay.
Particularly connected with like doing writing of screenplays, which actually I'm working on a trilogy which may end up being turned into a screenplay.
Okay.
So it could be that way. Third house is also brothers, you know, and I have a brother, an older brother, who's struggled a lot with depression and other issues. So, and with alcoholism and different things. He's not an alcoholic, so I shouldn't say alcoholism, but definitely, you know, had his challenges in the 70s with the whole drug world that was going on in the 70s. So Neptune can sometimes indicate that escapist kind of tendencies associated with third house kinds of things. So
okay.
If Neptune is in the seventh house, for example, this would be a kind of a warning, which I'll tell clients to be really careful of their client having, again, drug, alcohol, escapist type tendencies. Positive side would be that they should marry someone that has really strong spiritual, that they have strong spiritual affinity with, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And then what about the Uranus, Moon, and Jupiter there?
Uranus is, again, 438, September 13th. Oh, just looking at this chart. Uranus there, again, it can indicate the astrologer, you know, the metaphysician also. In terms of, I don't know, I've considered myself kind of a Promethean type person. Again, I have it in the 12th house, so it brings in a lot of interest in 12th house kinds of activities. Having 3 planets there, Jupiter, Moon, and Uranus all in the 12th house, indicates a lot of interest for me in yoga and meditation and any kind of practices that really explore, you know, the deeper undercurrents of life. But you'll see sometimes Uranus, again, prominent in people that are, again, wanting to do work with astrology. So I would say that. Yeah.
Now, you also pointed out that Uranus brings like sudden things in life. Did it do anything with this suddenness of Moon, Jupiter in 12th?
Well, I was drawn, I mean, I don't know if this is more so sudden, but early on in my life, I was drawn to astrology at the age of 12. I started learning the sun signs when I was a young kid. And, you know, so I was always drawn to it. And that I would be drawn to not only psychology, but particularly transpersonal psychology, more spiritual type psychology or cutting edge kind of psychology, not your traditional psychoanalytic or behavioral type psychology.
I see.
I would see that.
Okay.
Also for your viewers, I think I mentioned where Pluto is right now transiting. It's at about 23 degrees.
Let's see. This is the current chart. Pluto is at 23?
Yeah, that's what I have in Sag. And it's interesting because, you know, on the weekend, you know, we had the Pluto Sun, we had pretty much closer to Pluto Sun opposition.
Yeah.
So it was kind of more later last week, and as we move towards the weekend, as we move towards Guru Purnima, we had this very intense, you know, opposition from Pluto and the Sun being in opposition to each other. So it was kind of an intense week. I don't know how you fared with it. I mean, we got the blessings, thank God, of gurus and teachers.
Yeah.
In the midst of but people were a little edgy if you didn't.
Oh, no wonder I was edgy.
You can blame it on blame it on the Pluto Sun opposition.
Oh my God. You know what? That was so true. Yes. I experienced something very intense too. Yes.
It can be kind of harsh. I mean, that's where, again, Pluto, it takes no
Takes no prisoners.
prisoners. Yeah, I was going to say that. I thought, is that the right quote? But yeah, it's like that. It just doesn't care. It's a little bit like Saturn. Again, it just through all the BS, just gets right.
Clears the trash.
Yeah. So we've got Pluto there. So if any of your viewers has Pluto, again, say has a planet around that time, around that degree, it doesn't have to be exactly at 23 or 24 degrees of Sag, because actually Pluto is retrograding right now.
Yeah.
So we are there, so it's moving back through the zodiac. So even if you have a planet, say at 21, 22, of Sag sidereally, you're going to be having that transit. And actually, this is an important point to make about transits, is that these transits are still happening tropically as well as sidereally. So let's just say if you happen to have a planet at 23 degrees of Sag, you're going to still have this transit going over that planet in Western astrology as well as Vedic.
Yeah.
That's why Robert Hand's book, Planets in Transit, is such a classic book, because he doesn't even talk about the zodiac. He just talks about transits and how they're affecting the planets and how they're making aspects to the planet. Now, shifting gears here, if we look and see where Neptune is, we'll note that Neptune is at 19 degrees, almost 20 degrees of Aquarius. You can see it up there in the chart for this moment in time.
And look at us, we're conducting our interview when Moon, Ketu, and Neptune are together.
Yeah.
That's so strange. Like the spiritual, mystical energy is being talked about.
Yeah, a little bit of doubt and confusion and intrigue, but
and see, I'm confused about these outer planets, so I'm wanting to know.
Well, again, it's a whole fertile area of research for Vedic astrologers, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But that's interesting you bring that out, because it's true. There's that theme, you know.
Right, today we're discussing it, and especially in Sastabhisha Nakshatra, it's there. So
and Neptune's in Shatabhisha, which I didn't even think about, It's in that nakshatra we were talking about right at the end of it.
I'm telling you, we're like string puppets. We just go according to the plan of the sky. Oh, today you're going to do this. Okay, we're doing this. That's okay.
It's so funny, because if you pop that chart again up there, it's retrograding, at 19. So it actually just retrograded back. It just retrograded back, Kapiel, today, or the week, back into Shatabhisha.
Oh my God, that is so crazy.
It was in Purva.
Wow.
Purva Bhadrapada.
Yeah.
Retrograded back into Varuna's nakshatra, just so we could talk about it.
Oh man, that's what I'm saying. This is why I love astrology. It's, you see the proof right there of what is happening.
And I think finally Prajapati, or Uranus, I'm actually using the names that Narendra used.
Yeah.
4 degrees of Aries.
And it's an Ashwini nakshatra.
Correct. So we're talking about health,
Ketu's energy,
and how these planets can be used ultimately for our healing.
Yeah.
And I think them being discovered, again, I think it's important to utilize them and bring them into play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. So thank you so much, Dr. Harness, for again coming and giving a great insights into these planets. Again, I want to let you guys know that he's having a Vedic Astrology conference in November, starting November 30th, right?
Correct.
30th to the 4th, and everybody that you know is going to be there. I'm going to be there hanging out with everybody and just having a good time. So if you want to say have a good time, come over. So, and then check out his website, dennisharness.com. Correct?
And the conference website is just SedonaVedicAstrology.com.
Sedona Vedic Astrology. So this way you can even book. They can book like the hotels and everything. All the information is there, right?
Yeah, there's a portal that goes right into the resort, which is a really great resort, you know.
Oh man, that's my favorite. Poco Diablo.
Yeah.
That's my you know, that's my poison right there.
Yeah, we have.
I don't like any resort except Poco Diablo.
Yeah.
I just love being there. As soon as you come out, you're surrounded by red rocks all around you. Man, it's just healing. Especially, I love that weeping willow tree.
Yeah.
At Poco, that's my thing. I love being underneath that thing.
We always jokingly say we have a golf tournament there, but we call it the Ascending Masters Golf Tournament.
And the losers buy the beer for everybody. Oh no,
yeah,
the winner.
I'm working on a new golf book, Kapiel.
Oh.
It's called How to Develop My 4-Putt Skills. And then
Minus 6.
And then the last one is In Search of the Elusive Rainbow Jacket.
Rainbow jacket.
Okay.
Man, good times, good times. Thank you so much, Dr. Harness.
Hey, it was great.
Bye-bye.